to episode number 7 of Swing State Update. I'm your co-host, Austin Smith, with the great Tyler Boyer, who will be joining us from New Hampshire. A lot of things to talk about today in our 7th episode, lucky number 7. The amount of money being poured into Arizona through PACs to flip the Arizona legislature, a development in the United States Senate race in Arizona. We'll talk about the RNC on election integrity efforts with Tyler and the work that the RNC is trying to do and the county work that the local Republican parties are doing. But first, I wanted to start off by saying that we are praying and we're supporting our friends and our allies in Israel. Our organization at Turning Point, we are vast supporters of the Jewish people and the state of Israel. We understand what they're going through right now is horrific. Some of the most horrific scenes that we've seen in terrorism since 9/11 to these people in Israel and Gaza. And so we're praying with them and we're standing with them. And I ask that you continue to support and pray for the people of Israel as well, because they're our greatest ally in the Middle East, and President Trump did so much work making the Middle East a safer place, specifically Israel, and we've got to do everything we can for them to help defeat these animals known as Hamas. So, Tyler, how you doing?
And how are we looking today? How's Arizona holding down?
Well, I got to tell you, Tyler, so a couple days ago, there was an article that came out. The DreamWorks CEO, they have a PAC called Communities United, is launching an Arizona PAC, so it's an offshoot operation dedicated to gaining Democrat control of the Arizona legislature. Let's see if we can get the article pulled up here. DreamWorks CEO, political operation team, teams up with Governor Hobbs to launch Arizona PAC. Arizona Communities plans to spend money in legislative and congressional races. The Arizona PAC is an offshoot of Katzenberg's Federal Communities United Committee. For those of you who don't know, Katzenberg, Jeffrey Katzenberg, the CEO of DreamWorks, that does films like Shrek, he has a prolific background in donating to Democrat and liberal causes. And so he's willing to spend millions of dollars in a PAC here in Arizona. We already know that the millions that get poured in through the presidential races, through congressional races, now Senate races, and there's not a governor's race here in Arizona, but there's all 90 seats for the legislature are up. And so the Democrats are ready to pour millions of dollars down ballot and flipping the Arizona legislature. These are like some of the most expensive state house and state Senate races in the country with independent expenditures. Tyler, I want to get your take. What do we need to be aware of and know about this big PAC coming into Arizona to flip the legislature?
Well, first off, Austin, Jeffrey Katzenberg, if you don't know this, was a longtime person at Disney. So he was a Disney guy that was credited for many of the things that came out in the 90s. He was responsible for a lot that I believe happened in the late 80s, early 90s was kind of his stint that happened at Disney. And he didn't have a great exit from Disney. There was a lot he got booted out from Disney for, including sexual harassment of directors that happened, just a bunch of kind of like really weird stuff that was going on there. And then obviously he moved over to DreamWorks, and that's kind of where DreamWorks got their start. Was he left Disney and then kicked off, kind of the DreamWorks animation studios and all that stuff. So this guy's worth a ton of money, and he's like one of these. He's right in the same lane as like a Bill Gates, where they're just trying to come over and cross state lines now and really screw up other states. And so, this money is not a little bit of money in any way. And you're talking about big Hollywood liberals that are coming in. They want to do some major things in Arizona. Like, I don't know if we just got back from Atlanta. I was in Atlanta this week. And part of the reason why Georgia's so screwed up now is they brought Hollywood into Atlanta. And so I don't know if you ever see at the end of shows, Austin, where it says that it was filmed in Georgia, that has like a little Georgia peach at the end. But, these guys would love to take advantage of Arizona and bring all the politics, their crappy politics from California with them. Mm-hmm. So this is a really big deal that conservatives need to be aware of. and have to put up their hand and say stop, the same way that we said stop to how Mark Zuckerberg was coming into the state. We should be rejecting Katzenberg, and you should get to know him really, really well and say, absolutely not. We're not going to take this outside influence in the state of Arizona.
Right. And we've been talking about this, I mean, pretty much every episode, the millions of dollars that the left has continually funneled into Arizona, that their spending has gone up and conservative right-leaning center-right spending has gone down compared to the left. And they're gaining a lot of ground for that. And I've got a clip here, Megyn Kelly talking about Katzenberg's attempt to get Hillary Clinton elected in 2016. Play clip.
Jeffrey Katzenberg, very famous movie producer in Hollywood, said that I'll spend any amount to get Joe Biden reelected. Well, let me tell you something. Back in 2015-16, I saw Jeffrey Katzenberg in person, and he said the exact same thing to me back then about Hillary Clinton. Guess how that worked out? So it's not all about the money that is going to be spent on behalf of the candidate. It's about how it gets used. Is it used wisely or not? And I see your point. The GOP, the RNC, is not using the money wisely.
She makes Go ahead, Tyler.
Well, I was just going to say this. So the reason why this type of stuff is so important to keep your eye on the ball here, and we've been explaining this to so many different people, but there are basically three vectors that are taken for how money's spent in your state. So number one is for the presidential election. So I think last week we talked about how much money was going to be spent on TV. Obviously the presidential election has a crazy amount of impact for that, right? So, tons of money is going to be spent to try to get Joe Biden elected. It's crazy, it's insane, and it's not helpful to us. Number two is all the Senate and congressional races. So this year I think this is the fourth election in a row that we have, because of the special elections, that we have a Senate race again in Arizona. Yes. So people don't realize this. Normally you only have, 2 Senate races every 6 years. So you have a little bit of a break because you only have 2 senators and they have 6-year terms, right? So Arizona has been punched in the face repeatedly, because basically since I think the last time we didn't have a Senate election was maybe 2012.
Yeah, so 2016 we had a Senate election, 2018, 2020, 2022, 2024.
And 2014 too, I think.
I don't remember, because Jeff Flake was elected in 2012 and then McCain was back up in 2016.
Okay,
but that's
so
still,
14
that's
was
still
our
an
last
absurd amount of Senate elections.
So 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago was our last break. So we've had eight years in a row over and over and over. And so what does that mean? Increased political spending. Mm-hmm. So we have spending coming from the presidential elections, spending coming from the Senate elections, and then and then congressional elections, which happen every 2 years, which is normal. But then this third vector is the spending that's happening at the legislative races. And so the Democrats for a long time were like, we're not going to spend money on Arizona because there's no way for us to take over the legislature, which you serve in. Austin's a member of the state legislature. But now, because they already have all this money coming in for president, all this money coming in for Congress for the Senate races, now they're throwing more money. So the Katzenberg money is going, and others are going to specifically flip the state legislature. And like you just said so poignantly, the Republican apparatus nationally is spending less money in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And so this is why we're ringing the bell and raising the red flags. And we're going, guys, all this money's coming in for the presidential. All this money's coming in for the Senate race. All this money's already coming in for the congressional races, trying to get these congressional House seats and flip Congress so that Democrats control Congress again. And then on top of that, they're injecting money into the county races and the legislative races. Mm-hmm. And so you can't survive. I mean, we're talking about billions. Legitimately hundreds of millions of dollars that were never spent in Arizona before. And if the Republicans decide not to spend that money, it doesn't matter how good your candidates are.
That's right.
It doesn't matter how much grassroots effort that you have. And this is why it drives me crazy when people are they look at 2022 and they're like, oh, Kari Lake lost by, she got body slammed. No, she didn't get body slammed. She lost by 17,000 votes when basically none of that apparatus money came in, and there certainly wasn't an increase.
That's right.
There was a decrease in that. She got less money than Doug Ducey got. She got, Blake Masters got less money than Martha McSally got. What did the Democrats do? They spent 10 times more.
It's wild because
you can't win.
You can't win. And I had a conversation with a reporter from ABC 15 a couple weeks ago, and they're talking about the millions that are being poured in to bring ranked choice voting and jungle primaries to Arizona, because those groups will have a couple $1 million on hand. All of this is designed to turn out Democrat voters. High propensity Democrat voters, obviously, low propensity Democrat voters, and independents that lean left or more Democrat. And the reason why they're doing this is because the more ballots they can get out, the more potential that they have to get ballots in the ballot drop box or in the mailbox. This is all by design. And so everybody within the sound of our voices needs to hear this. If you know somebody running for office, if you know an organization that's conservative, remind them, focus on Arizona. Yeah. If you're a millionaire or a billionaire and you're conservative, help us here in Arizona. We need every single cent. Because the way Arizona goes, the entire country is going to know. We will repeatedly talk about that every single week. I mean, this is episode 7, and we have talked about Arizona extensively every single time because it's that serious. And now this should raise even more alarms that Hollywood they got their own PAC, Communities United. This was started last year to support Karen Bass, who's now the mayor of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. They're willing to pour all of that Hollywood and LA money into Arizona because it's just right across the river. Arizona and California are divided by the Colorado River. It's not that hard for California to have so much influence into Arizona, and now we're seeing it. And because the Democrats have the top 3 offices in Arizona, plus the 2 United States Senate seats, they want the legislature now. This is the last stand. So like the RNC, the NRCC, the NRSC, all of the PACs, all of the C4s, all of the political organizations, focus on Arizona. All of your time and money, effort, and energy needs to be in Arizona, because in a year from now, when it's October 12th, 2024, when early ballots are already out, we don't want to be scrambling, because if we are in a spot where we're scrambling on October 12th, sayonara, game over in Arizona. There's just no way we can overcome that type of money if we're already behind now. But we have time. We have time to turn it around.
Well, I'm wearing my Diamondbacks hat. This is the trendy upside down logo. It's not a distressed logo. It's a trendy thing. So, but yeah, our D-backs just swept LA this week, and we got to do the same thing to LA politics in Arizona. We've got to sweep LA, and we got to absolutely decimate LA and keep it way out of the state of Arizona. I want to throw this up. I don't know if we have that screen grab real quick, just to reemphasize who Katzenberg is. Jeffrey Katzenberg was a big donor to the Lincoln Project, and so you've got. It's not just him, right? It's always, whenever someone like him gives, there's always a network that follows guys like him. So you've got a real scenario here where you've got a handful of heavyweights, like it says right in this article, that are they're like bleeding out of their eyes and out of their nostrils and out of their mouths, like just angry that the fact that like Joe Biden is potentially going to hand the presidency back over to Donald Trump. They're doing everything that they possibly can to infiltrate and influence these states. And it's not just Arizona. It's also Georgia. It's also Wisconsin. The left is completely focused on these 3 states that we're focused on. That's why we're so obsessive about this, because nobody else is talking obsessively like this in the country about the states that are going to absolutely hand the country back over, keep the country back in the hands of Democrats, which, I mean, if we allow this to happen, we may lose the country forever. So you got to become aware. We got to push back. We got to stay vigilant and then identify when these people get this money, this outside money, and keep pressure on locally in the local communities for calling out some of these candidates who are accepting all this insane PAC support from LA and from Hollywood, from California.
And it's so hypocritical because the Democrats have always talked about, we got to get big money out of politics. Big money is ruining this country. It's ruining our leaders. Big money, big and politics, dark money, overwhelmingly supports liberals, Democrats, far left candidates, not moderate candidates, far left candidates. So whenever somebody tells you that, big money and big corporations are getting Republicans elected, that's just not true anymore. That is just not true. You're getting Hollywood CEOs from huge corporations to pour millions of dollars into a state house seat in Arizona. What is more swampy and bad than that is that some multi-millionaire in LA who doesn't know a thing about the East Valley or the West Valley or North Phoenix or the problems that we have here in Arizona, but he's willing to get millions of dollars to flip the Arizona legislature. Not because, he's concerned Arizona's going in the wrong direction, but because blood is in the water. The spending has continued to go up. The political activity has continued to go up. And here we are on the right, kind of just like, oh, well, we just got to have better candidates. No, shut up. There's so many establishment moderate consultants in Arizona that keep parroting that phrase and that talking point on social media and traditional media, like, oh, if we just had better candidates or moderate Republicans or liberal Republicans, we'd start winning these elections again. None of that is true. If that were true, Martha McSally would already be a senator still. If that were true, there would be a vast majority of our congressional delegation wouldn't be Freedom Caucus. That's just not true. It's not about the candidate anymore. Yeah, you want to have a good candidate that can convey a message in these battleground states. But if we don't have the financial resources to do it, then you're not going to win. And if that were the case, if it was just about being a squish and having a lot of money, then Karen Taylor Robeson would have been the Republican nominee for governor. And she couldn't. She spent millions of her husband's money. Doug Ducey spent millions of his PAC money trying to get her elected, and they still couldn't do it. So you got to get on board, guys. Tyler talked, and I talked about it a few weeks ago, is that, we can't be gatekeeping who our candidates are and where this money is going. We've got to be, supporting the grassroots, who we know our candidates are going to be, who the entire majority of the Republican Party supports for a specific office. We can't have people at the top being gatekeepers saying, nope, that's not who we want, so we're going to take the $1 million that we can influence and taking it home. That's wrong. Is it about you or is it about the country? Because if it's about you, then the people should absolutely know about that. Tyler.
Well, Austin, it's even worse than that because a lot of these donors keep pulling back their money and then they're putting it towards things that are actually destructive to the Republican Party. And so, and again, I hate using this example, but this is what happened. Karen Taylor Robeson last election, instead of getting out and after she lost, coming together and setting an example and working to get Republicans elected, she spent all of her time, influence, and energy on the proposition to give illegal aliens here in the state of Arizona, I guess they're in the state of Arizona, I'm in New Hampshire right now, but in Arizona, discounts to attend our public universities. Yeah. Where when we have citizens of the United States that come here that pay the full scale, legal immigrants that pay really expensive, exorbitant rates at ASU and U of A and NAU. And that's where they spend their time and money and effort. And it's like, guys, even if you support crazy things like that, you have to understand the strategic approach here that's not going to help Republicans. And so it's really self-harm that a lot of these establishment types do to themselves because they're so disconnected from the base of the voters. And again, the example that we give all the time, and I tell people all the time, well, it's like, well, the Democrats embrace their base, and right. they almost always do it. And this includes John Fetterman, who I can guarantee you, there's not a single person in the Democrat Party in Pennsylvania that's high up that's like excited about John Fetterman being their senator. But they didn't spend and waste their time, energy, and efforts and money doing that. They spent all their time and energy realizing that, like, hey, if we waste all those resources, we're going to lose down ballot races all the way down. And so we're just not going to mess with it. That's who the grassroots wants. That's who they get. And we're going to have to make sure he gets elected, but then we're going to help everybody else down. And then hopefully in the future have a better candidate than John Fetterman. And that's the way they operate. And we don't operate that way right now. We have an establishment that is pulling back the purse strings that they're pulling back, the pocketbooks, because they want to dictate who the candidates are going to be. They're technocrats is what they are. They want to tell other people what to do and how to do it. And they don't like having people in there that are representative of the actual people in the party. And we keep winning over people that are independents and even disaffected Democrats. But, you can't, it's really hard to get all that support, like what we've had in Arizona and other places across the country, and then fight, $50 million of people on our side and then $50 million from the Democrats, or worse, $75 million on our side and then $150 million from the Democrats. That's not a winning strategy. So the Republicans have to get on board and realize you're taking your ball and going home when your guy doesn't win the primary. You just have to suck it up and go with it. Otherwise, you're never going to get a seat at the table again.
Couldn't agree more with you, Tyler. We're going to keep paying attention to this issue because we know this money is coming into Arizona. Turning Point Action every single day. We're talking to voters. We're talking to precinct committeemen, alerting this. Tyler and the team are doing a fantastic job going around, talking to other supporters to really focus on Arizona. So we'll keep you guys updated as more information continues to develop regarding, Communities United coming into Arizona. RNC, Tyler, planning on hiring poll workers and watchers, election integrity directors in 15 battleground states ahead of the 2024 election. It's part of the RNC's push to mobilize on-the-ground election integrity directors, what they're saying. For those crucial states, Ronna McDaniel said in a statement that the election integrity hires seek to hold Democrats accountable for bad laws that make voting less secure. The RNC plans to have election integrity directors in 15 battleground states by the end of the year who will recruit and train volunteers to be poll watchers. The department also plans on continue filing election lawsuits and hire counsels in those 15 states. What do you think about that, Tyler? What's going on here with this election integrity director move at the RNC?
Yeah, so I'm just going to give it to you real here. So the RNC, there's a little bit of history here. And so the RNC actually for decades couldn't do anything on election integrity because they entered into an agreement that basically sidelined them for years and years and years and years. So the biggest question that I was always asked up until 2020 is like, well, where's the RNC been? Why have they been asleep at the wheel? Well, it's because they actually entered into a consent decree that sidelined themselves for decades, which we're actually really lucky that more damage wasn't done during that time by the Democrats. But it was done nevertheless the last few years heading into 2020. When that consent decree was finally lifted, they could finally do things. And so the RNC raised a ton of money in 2020 and beyond and through 2022 for election integrity efforts. And we've seen in 2021, 2022, the RNC going in and actually supporting election integrity, meaning putting poll watchers and training poll workers, which is something that they couldn't do before, according to the consent decree. The Democrat Party, meanwhile, has been doing this for years. They've been training hundreds of thousands of activists over the years in all 50 states. So we've been behind basically decades, and now they're coming in and doing this. And there's election integrity directors in each of these states, and most of these have been hired. They were there in 2022 as well. Now, this is the kind of the real talk with this is the election integrity efforts that are there, I think are obviously it's the party's job to fill poll workers and poll watchers. But the people who do most of that work are actually the county chairs. And so they don't get a lot of the credit. The RNC oftentimes will take credit for the directors doing that work. They're aiding, they're providing systems, but most of the actual hard work of recruiting poll watchers and poll workers is happening at the county by county level. And these people go totally unthanked, totally unappreciated. And I think that's part of the reason why there's so many people that get angry and have some animosity towards the RNCs, because they do all this work locally for little to no pay or no pay at all and spend a lot of their own resources doing this. And again, they kind of see articles like this that come out that were like, Ron is taking credit for poll watching and poll working. that's not really happening. It's the county chairs that do it. Here in Maricopa County, we had thousands of people recruited across the state of Arizona, hundreds of slots that needed to be filled. Gina Swoboda was a wonderful, wonderful asset here in Arizona. We need more people like Gina. But the county chair that was here, Mickey Nyland, did a ton of work. The county committee did a ton of work. And that will be up again for the county committees to do. And again, nothing's more frustrating than when they're not getting their adequate pats on the back. So that's number one. Number two, and this is most important too, is this conversation about having adequate legal representation in the states. One of the reasons why Harmeet Dillon ran for RNC chair, she was so disturbed by how little legal representation that was adequate was in these key target states. And I can't speak for every state, Austin, but I can tell you, as I was the county chair 10 years ago in Maricopa County, I have had a close eye on things in the state party for a long time. I've been the national committeeman since after the 2020 election, so basically starting in 2021 through now. And we do not have nearly adequate enough legal representation to take on the Mark Eliases and the Perkins Coys of the world. We just don't. And so this conversation that like, oh yeah, we're going to have the best army. No, the army should already be boots on the ground in Arizona and Wisconsin and Georgia. We should have a legion of competent lawyers that are here permanently to take on the dozens of lawyers that are planted here by Mark Elias, the DNC, and Perkins Coy. But we don't have. I'm telling you right now, we don't have that right now.
Right,
and it doesn't exist. I mean, Kari Lake will tell you we don't have that.
Right.
Abe Hamadeh has had very meager little support from the RNC, thanks to Rick Grinnell mostly, and so. But it's been very little support. We don't have a legion of lawyers here that are supporting Abe Hamadeh in his case.
Right.
So
go ahead.
So I'll just kind of put a pin in this. So this conversation that exists, that's like, oh, this is going to happen, guys. I'm telling you right now, if I thought that was going to happen, and I thought it happened effectively in 2022 or in 2020, I would have voted for Ronna McDaniel again. But as a member of the RNC, I did not vote for her. With this is like kind of like the epitome of this conversation. So nothing's more frustrating than when people go out and say, oh yeah, we're going to do all this. It's like, no, dude, I've met some of the new people they hired. They cleaned house. They replaced all of them, a new election integrity department, really nice people. But it's like they're reinventing the wheel every year, every 12 to 18 months. And you cannot expect to win against professionals who are planted in these key target states for years and years and years and years with that type of approach. And I yield.
And the left, the Perkins Coy and the Mark Eliases are obsessed with elections in these states. Why? Because they know how to continue to manipulate them. We talked about earlier, Tyler saying that the RNC election and why Harmeet ran, because the lack of obsession from the RNC on these swing states, election integrity efforts, legal lawfare efforts, it's staggering. We talk about during the RNC race that Tyler was very much a part of, vocally talking about the changes that need to happen, why we need a different RNC chair. Why isn't there a massive RNC office located in Arizona, in Georgia, in Wisconsin? Do we have to be, obsessed? I'm going to continue to say obsessed. We have to be obsessed with these states, with everything we do, putting our offices in these states, hiring our lawyers in these states, living in these states, paying attention to the election legislation that happens every year after elections through state legislatures, the money that continues to go in, and we're just not there. And Tyler brought up about, reinventing the wheel. We know where the holes and where the issues are when it comes to elections, whether that's like signature verification, the issues that we had in Maricopa County regarding printing ballots, the vote center model, poll workers, electronic signature verification, adjudication. We know where these issues are. We know where it has to be tackled and effectively fought against, but we're just not there. And this is why we talk about the having a well-rounded conservative apparatus outside of the normal party apparatus. The Democrats a long time ago gave up a lot of that responsibility I shouldn't say gave up, took away so much of that responsibility that was delegated to the parties because of leadership changes every 2 years, of county leadership changes, of state leadership changes. And they could just raise an exorbitant amount of money off of that, whether that's a 501c3 nonprofit, just for voter registration. They said, you know what, Democrats? The big Jeff Katzenbergs on the left were like, we're not giving you guys $2 million to register voters at the Democrat Party anymore. We're starting our own nonprofit voter reg organization, and we're going to raise tens of millions of dollars to register Democrat voters. And the RNC here is, oh, we're going to hire some more poll workers. No! We have outside organizations that focus on this stuff.
Well, they're not hiring poll workers. They've hired 15 election directors, and they'll have a handful more staff, but not very many. I mean, Austin, we have more than that in staff in Arizona right now. We're talking about hiring hundreds in Arizona. So like they're significantly under-equipped to handle the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of volunteers that need to go into these states. But more importantly, so they're not full-time. They're not paying full-time people to do this. The RNC is not doing that. They're paying people to manage an exorbitant amount of people that they're never able to manage. So they're having to rely exclusively on the counties for this. But what's most important about all this is that, you've got a scenario brewing where the Democrats are getting stronger and they're putting more money in. And so you've seen some of this with what's going on in Michigan, where they're attacking citizens that are involved, activists that are involved. I believe the next step of what they're going to be doing in Arizona and other places is the Mark Elias's and the lawfare that they're running is they're going to personally attack people who are poll workers and poll watchers. They're going to go after these people and try to scare. I mean, this isn't a form of intimidation. They want to intimidate every Republican from not getting involved, not being involved, not fighting in the political process and in the First Amendment protected process. And specifically in these election facilitating volunteer positions. And I want to say that again, these election volunteer positions. I mean, I'm telling you right now, if Mark Elias identifies and gets listed the names of many of these people who are volunteers, and it's always the same people, by the way, the people who do poll working and poll watching, these are largely unpaid or very little paid. They're paid by the county in some of these cases, but that's it. And they get attacked and threatened and intimidated by the Democrats. They're never going to do it again. And that's what they want. They want us to not have anyone show up to these things. And they know this. And so that's part of their job. That's what they're tasked with doing. And that's the future that's going to exist in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. If we don't get our act together and have a Republican National Committee who really should be managing the litigation efforts, that should be protecting our people, that should be protecting our activists, and really are doing a subpar job. And that's just being really nice to say that, but they're not even showing up in some of these cases. I'm going to give you one quick story of something that happened this last election cycle without going into too many of the details. But one of the lawsuits that was filed specifically they had a situation that happened in Michigan where they were preventing Republicans from becoming poll workers. Well, because of the lackluster litigation efforts by the RNC, they actually missed key dates and totally dropped the ball, which would have given the Republicans a leg up. And this is just totally unacceptable. This was all covered in a report that came out. This is part of the reason why they cleaned house at the RNC, was because they were not happy with the truth being told in a report about the lackluster litigation efforts that were happening and costing us effectively elections. This is we're not talking about just the presidential and Senate race elections and congressional elections. When balls get dropped like that, that costs us school board seats and legislative House seats and Senate seats and city seats and mayors and city council members. So, I mean, this is a huge problem that exists. And it really is bothersome to me when people act like they've done this tremendous job. I can tell you right now, the job has not been done. They have not proven that they've been able to do the job. And to your point, that's exactly why outside people need to pick up the ball and say, hey, if they're not going to be able to get the job done, somebody's going to have to do it, and we need to do that.
You're absolutely right. And another quick story about this. I remember when the city of Tucson was looking for, election day workers, poll workers, they were discriminating against people who weren't vaccinated. They said that they were going to only allow people who were vaccinated. And that's how far the left will go. Obviously, that was struck down in court, and now it's illegal. But that's how far they're willing to go to play this game, to keep Republicans, conservatives, center-right people, America Firsters away from that conversation. And so I encourage you guys, follow Tyler on Twitter. He posts about the RNC stuff quite often when it comes to these big actions that they're taking. And this is just another perfect example of, making it seem like something big and great's going on. But in reality, we're just reinventing the wheel here, especially like a state like Arizona, where election integrity has been the most important thing that we have to do as a party in Arizona. We don't get everything we want, but we continually try to make elections better. Speaking of elections being better, major announcement to the United States Senate race here in Arizona. Kari Lake, former TV news anchor, Kari Lake, candidate for governor of the state of Arizona. Our friend Kari Lake announced she's running for the United States Senate. Play clip 3.
And when I'm back in the White House, I need strong fighters like Kari in the Senate. She is a fighter. She's strong and she's good. She's got a great heart, by the way. I will need a majority in the House and in the Senate. We have to have a big, strong majority to help me push our America First agenda through, and to push it through really fast. That starts right here tonight by helping Kari Lake win in Arizona, and she will win too. She's an amazing woman, respected by everybody. Kari is one of the toughest fighters in our movement, and I am proud to give her my complete and total endorsement for the United States Senate.
Right out of the gate, the infamous Donald J. Trump endorsement. I think she's the only one that I know of so far that day one of their announcement, Trump throws all of his political support behind Kari Lake. I was at the rally; she invited us to go, and it was very interesting to see a lot of enthusiasm there for Kari Lake for the United States Senate. A lot of name ID within the Republican Party. A lot of energy. A lot of people felt Kari Lake has been cheated because of the election day's mishaps that happened in Maricopa County last November. And, now she is one of the most prolific Republican politicians, not just in Arizona, but across the country. And so now we've got a race. We have a legitimate primary race now between Kari Lake and Sheriff Mark Lamb. Tyler, what did you think about Kari's and President Trump's endorsement and Kari Lake coming out of the gate firing with that?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people were speculating how soon it would be before Trump endorsed Kari, and I don't think very many people thought that she was going to get the endorsement on day one. It turns out it was like minute one. It was second one that she got the endorsement. But look, I've said this for a long time, is that the races, and this isn't just unique to Arizona, but these races come down to, at this point, people who are supported by President Trump and people who are not. And most of the time, a vast majority of the time, the people who are supported by President Trump win their nomination. They just do. And that's how powerful his nomination or his support, his endorsement is. And it's more than just Trump, but it's a movement within the Republican Party that makes up most of the party, right? Like you and I see this. You see this in your legislative district, right? When you're at your meetings, Austin, how many people do you think that show up to your legislative district meetings support Trump?
Oh, I mean, all of them. The vast majority. I think probably maybe 2 PCs in my legislative district support Ron DeSantis over Donald Trump.
So like you've got 90% support amongst the activists for Donald Trump, the people who are involved with the party. The remainder are Ron DeSantis, who, that's no Chris Christie, right? So you've got the party is extraordinarily conservative. The vast majority of voters now are very conservative. They're with Trump. And so his endorsement matters. And the things that in the rhetoric that's coming out matters from each of these candidates. So, there's only really space for two candidates basically in every of these races. If Trump endorses, or whoever's the Trump adjacent candidate and who's not. And unfortunately, what tends to happen is that even somebody like, and this is why I'm afraid of happening in this race, for example, Mark Lamb was great with Trump and he's been awesome. But what sometimes happens is people get angry. And this is like what happened with Matt Salmon against Kari, is they get angry that they didn't get the endorsement from Trump, or they get upset and that Trump supports somebody else, and then they get defeated, and then they get angrier, and then they become anti-Trump. And that's not really a great way to go. And so I don't think Mark Lamb is going to do that. Mark's a good dude. Sheriff Lamb has been awesome. Kari being in this race, though, I don't think gives a lot of space for a lot of other candidates, is my point. There's you can become an anti-Trump character, or you can maybe get away with being like Mark, where you're like pro-Trump, but like obviously you don't have his endorsement, so you just kind of hang out and see what happens. But almost always what ends up happening is the Trump endorsed candidate wins. So now at this point, you have to look at this and say, okay, for Arizona, that's such a critical state. It's like the John Fetterman rule, which we talked about before. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how you feel about the candidate. Kari Lake has the support of the vast majority of Republicans. I've seen polls. It's going to be really hard for anyone to beat Kari Lake. So and she has Trump's endorsement. So now it's like, do we waste our time in a primary doing this, or do we just embrace it and we say, okay, we've got bigger fish to fry in Arizona, like winning the presidential race, making this Senate race is totally winnable with the Sinema in the race, splitting the vote for Ruben Gallego. There's lots of races up and down ballot. We got to keep the House, we got to keep the Senate and the state legislature. Like, these are important things that have to be looked at. But it really requires people to have some kind of discipline and focus when it comes to that. And I just don't know that we have that discipline across the entire party. And going back to the earlier conversation that we had of, how do we convince the establishment that, like, hey, you sitting on the sidelines or funding things that are going to help Democrats aren't going to help the country. That's really the conversation that happens now. So, Kari's a good friend, Godspeed. Mark Lamb, Sheriff Lamb's a great friend. We love him to death, but this is where this conversation comes up, and it goes like, how do we get the best possible Republicans to run in every race and then support them? Look, we do have some relatively bad Republicans in some other races across the state. We'll talk about that later at a different time, but right now it's like, okay, we have to embrace, going back to the D-backs, their whole slogan right now is embrace the chaos. Mm-hmm. We have to embrace the chaos of what happens in these races and identify and just say, okay, how can we take the smartest approach from this point forward? Because you're not going to change some of these things. Mm-hmm. They're out of your hands, right?
Yeah, and another point, Tyler, is I had a conversation with somebody who was seriously considering running for the United States Senate. This was before Kari got in. This was before, obviously, the Trump endorsement. And I mentioned, I was like, you don't want to be the person that's running in a primary for one of these offices that does not have the Trump endorsement. A couple reasons. One, you don't have the Trump endorsement. It's a lot harder to win. Two, when you're the guy that doesn't have the Trump endorsement, you will be looked at as if you are anti-Trump, because Tyler brought up Matt Salmon being a perfect example. There was an article that just came out yesterday in Newsweek saying running against Kari Lake is a suicide mission, ex-opponent warns. That was Matt Salmon. Matt Salmon said that running against Kari Lake is a suicide mission. She runs to destroy, not just win. And I will tell you, Kari Lake is a fierce competitor. She is a fierce primarier, taking on Karen Taylor Robeson, Matt Salmon, both very well known in Arizona. Obviously, Karen Taylor Robeson had the money and the backing, and Matt Salmon being somebody who had a lot of conservative bona fides running for Congress, or being in Congress and then running running for governor, and they went through a brutal primary together, absolutely brutal. That's because, Kari does talk to the base. Kari understands those issues. I love Sheriff Mark Lamb. He's a great guy. He's done a phenomenal job as the sheriff, standing up for our constitutional rights, being an elected member of law enforcement. We need Sheriff Lamb somewhere. Does that mean he's going to beat Kari Lake? I don't know. I don't see a pathway to victory at this point. But we need Sheriff Mark Lamb in this fight. We need him to be around. We need him to continue, ringing the alarm bell on the border of what's happening here in Arizona. But what Matt Salmon's saying, she runs to destroy, as in he meaning like she destroys the other person's career, the other person's life. And I was like, I like Matt Salmon, but he's just wrong here. She's not destroying you. It's the party base. It's the grassroots that you're not really in line with their message. And it's not that that this person is destroying you. It's that they have much more in common, or they understand where the vast majority of the Republican Party is. And it can get brutal. I mean, it gets brutal, but that doesn't mean that they're destroying you. It means that, there's a lot of voters who are dissatisfied with people who are not the Trump endorsed candidate. Tyler.
Well, this is some insider stuff. So I talked to all the prospective candidates, pretty regularly, and I consider the vast majority of them friends, right? And so, and especially I consider Sheriff Mark Lamb, but and just for just to clear my name here, Sheriff Mark Lamb is like my second cousin. So he's actually my dad's second cousin. So I don't know what that makes me, like second cousin once removed or something. So, or twice removed. So semi-related to him. And so that, there's no animosity that exists for anyone that wants to run. I think it's a great thing to have competition in races. Right. But the reality is that, it's pointless to spend unnecessary money in a state that needs every dime to beat the Democrats, right? So right now we're underfunded. Conservatives are certainly underfunded. Sheriff Lamb has the capacity to be a great fundraiser. Kari Lake has the capacity to be a great fundraiser. Without without the crutch of the establishment, do they still need to support her? Yeah, I think so. Do they still need to support Marco? Yeah, I think so. But like, you've got a situation now, like some people have brought up, and this is making the establishment really angry. Juan Ciscomani, who's down in Tucson and has run in that district, and it's a pretty tight district. I think it's leaning Republican, especially in the presidential year. I think there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to keep it and win. But his congressional record's been really bad. And so some people have said, hey, why doesn't Mark Lamb think about running against him in the primary? He would have Trump's support. He'd win easily. His district, half the district is Pinal County, where Mark Lamb is the sheriff. Instead of running for Senate against Kari, run and be a more conservative representative down in that congressional district. And a lot of people have been really up in arms about this, that are big Juan supporters, which is the Doug Ducey. This is insider for everybody. This is the Doug Ducey camp, right? This is all the Ducey people who support Juan. Juan, by the way, great family man, great dude, beautiful family. He's a first generation Arizonan, a first generation American, but he's had kind of a crappy voting record. His best friend was Kevin McCarthy, who just got yanked. And his voting record is not great. And so the thing I've told people is like, hey, maybe Juan should talk to more conservatives. Maybe Juan should start voting a little bit better. And then then you won't have the threat of like somebody like Mark Lamb running against you, or someone else running against you. Just vote a little bit better. And then when you have bad votes, talk to people and explain it a little bit more. We may not agree with you, we may still disagree with you, but having communication is a great way to start. That's something that's not being done again on the establishment side. And so then they pull in, and this is what my biggest fear is. And again, this is super insider stuff with Arizona politics. And this is really important because Arizona is so important for the presidential race, is that my fear is that the Juan Ciscomanis of the world and those guys, all the Ducey acolytes, are going to support Kyrsten Sinema in the Senate race against someone like Kari. So is that's what's formulating right now. And this is the reason why the lines in the sand have to kind of be drawn, which is that's what's going to happen, guys, is they're going to, and if that happens, they're going to throw the race, and Sinema's not going to end up getting elected. Ruben Gallego, a radical Democrat is going to get elected. And that is bad for Arizona. That's bad for America.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And the Arizona Chamber of Commerce has a horrible track record of propping up these really bad candidates who end up not being, the most pro-business friendly or most center right leaning people, and that's to their own demise because there's some folks on the Ducey acolytes that are just, they're not as conservative as they say that they are. And when push comes to shove,
they love Kyrsten Sinema.
Yeah, they love Sinema. They think that she's the most.
Sinema.
Yeah, they love her. They think she's the most. She's the best thing since sliced bread. She's actually moderate. I'm like, no, she's actually more liberal than Mark Kelly. Go to tpaction.com/scorecard and check it out.
Exactly. You're exactly right. She's more liberal than Mark Kelly. She's more leftist than Mark Kelly.
Yeah, and
she was a self-avowed communist when she was in the state legislature.
Yeah, and she never voted for like any of Trump's appointees to the courts. She never had voted for anything slightly conservative. It's always just been Joe Biden agenda the entire time that she's been down there. She voted for the impeachment twice of Donald Trump, or to convict Donald Trump. We got one more clip here I want to play you. Kari Lake running into Ruben Gallego at the airport because this is going to be a great matchup. You got like a MAGA America First Kari Lake, and then you've got commie little Ruben Gallego. Play clip 4.
Beer gut by Gallego.
I think it's great that we could have a civil conversation too.
Civil, absolutely. But you know what's not civil? People dying on the streets. And in your district,
Our state,
in your district,
our state,
no, it's your district. You have the fastest growing homeless population in the country.
There are veterans. Also has the fastest growing economy in the country. And this is our state. This is our problem.
So you're together. Okay. No, I had a solution for our homeless population.
And I look forward to working.
You got railroaded.
You did. And this guy wants to destroy our country. He really does. You have the fastest growing homeless population in the country, in your district.
I've been bringing.
You've got veterans dying, and you're voting to cut veteran.
That's absolutely not true.
That is absolutely true. I just saw your vote.
It's going to be fun, man. I tell you, Ruben Gallego, he talks so much crap about conservatives, about Republicans, anybody who's just center right, and Kari Lake doesn't put up with it. I'm looking forward to a potential debate, and I think Kari Lake is a way better candidate, obviously, than Ruben Gallego. Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, so Ruben is the former spouse of Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego. They got divorced some time ago. They were like the political power couple, and Ruben got into Congress without getting into it. They split, but so they're not together. So a lot of people still think that they're married. They're not. They're not together. They don't have the same type of political base. But Ruben is a whack job leftist. In fact, if anybody, this is just kind of a unique thing. If anybody's ever watched House of Cards, they have a character in there that they modeled after Ruben Gallego for a few episodes. And so it's actually kind of funny. They had a bright light. They've always been targeting him. They've been trying to pump him up for years and years and years. And the jury's kind of out still amongst Democrats if they think he's actually like the future of the Democrat Party. Kari is going to, eat his lunch. Kyrsten, I think, is going to eat his lunch. I'm really looking forward to a 3-way debate between them because I think Kari's going to shine amongst both of them because, to your point, Kyrsten is liberal, right? She's leftist. So she's not going to look common sense because Kari is going to be able to talk about the issues that are common sense, especially with this Israel attack happening, right? It's like you've got Kyrsten Sinema, who once upon a time was a self-avowed communist. I wouldn't be surprised if there is stuff out there that shows of her support for Palestine and Palestinians, the Palestinian regime. Ruben can't run away from that because leftists are all over that. And so just stuff like that's going to become common sense if Kari can play that right. And again, keep Kyrsten dividing Democrats because there should be more Democrats that vote for Kyrsten than Republicans. And there certainly should be more Democrats and independents that vote for Kyrsten than Republicans by a lot. And so that's going to really harm Ruben. And Kari just has to shore up, I think, a 40% number of all of the vote, which should be doable amongst Republicans if she makes it through. And that's going to be one heck of a debate. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. It is going to be a Senate race for the ages here in Arizona. That's for sure. We need you to go to tpaction.com/PC. Everything Tyler and I talked about today will mean nothing unless you're a precinct committeeman. You are not actually in the Republican Party unless you're a precinct committeeman. You've got to lead your precinct. You lead your precinct, you'll help lead the country. You need you to go to tpaction.com/chase. We need you to chase the vote. Sign up with us in all these key battleground states where you're at. If you live in Tennessee, but we're going to need you in Georgia. We're going to need you to drive down from Knoxville to the outskirts of Atlanta to knock doors. If you're same thing, if you're in California, drive on over to Arizona on the weekends or during the week to chase the vote with us, getting out and chasing the ballots, because we told you this episode, the left is pouring millions and millions of dollars into this state already. A good portion of that will be on ballot chasers, will be to try to save Sinema or Ruben Gallego, to pass abortion on demand, to bring ranked choice voting to Arizona. How we combat that is we're going to have to continue to chase the vote just as well as the left does. tpaction.com/chase. We also need you to get involved. We need you to be aware of all Turning Point events. We need you to be a ballot chaser. We need you to be a precinct committeeman. We want you to learn how to use the TP Action mobile app. Go on the Apple Store or whatever one that Google uses. Go on the App Store, Turning Point Action, download our app, and immediately get involved in your neighborhood, knocking on doors, registering voters, knowing the key targets in your area. Our staffers, if you're a Turning Point Action, precinct committeeman, you sign up with us. We have a staff member that will reach out to you, help you get your footing, get your feet wet a little bit to be a grassroots activist. We also had a scorecard update. We need you to go to tpaction.com/scorecard. We had some shakeups there with members of Congress who were, 100%ers that were Patriot rated with Turning Point Action. We have a couple people that have kind of been over the map a little bit lately because there's going to be a new speaker's race, and we're going to have another spending vote coming up pretty soon. So go to tpaction.com/scorecard. Tyler, final words.
Yeah, our big battle right now, everybody, is we are up against the left that's fighting like heck to make sure that that they outnumber us out in the field. So everything that we're doing is accurately and smartly directing resources to make sure that we have enough of a challenge against the left that we can win. Right now, I tell people this all the time, Austin. If this was 1992, if this was 1994, Republicans would be winning in huge margins in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. But they're putting all of their resources. We're talking about not a few $1,000,000 here and there. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars. I estimate that we're going to have over $100 million there just for ballot chasing. And so your involvement and getting involved with us today, downloading the TP Action app, not the TP USA app, the Turning Point Action application on iOS and Android, getting involved today. We're going to be directing thousands of activists in these states, tens of thousands of activists in these states, to getting involved and doing just a little bit that needs to be done in order to make sure that we win. And I'm going to tell you this right now, Austin, they're getting very nervous because we're right over the target with this stuff. And so they're coming after Turning Point with crazy veracity. They're coming after you and me and all of our activists. But the good news is that we have thousands of people involved. We have dozens of leaders that are at our office, hundreds of activist leaders that are in the states that are going to be able to withstand the evil forces of the left. And so we can pull down a victory. And it's going to require a lot of work, but we're ready to do the work. So we need your help. Join us at tpaction.com/get involved, tpaction.com/chase, and follow along and get more involved. We need you at the forefront of the battlefield.
Tyler's correct. Thanks for joining, guys. We'll see you next week.